Welcome. This time, the Freethinker Institute offers you help with finding and getting the job you want. Garrett Lang, the founder of the FTI, shares his insight on the subject. To get in touch with us, you can find the link to our Discord community in the description.
So let's go ahead and kick things off. I will say, I do like to do a quick introduction for the Freethinker Institute, which is my not-for-profit. And so I'll just give a quick intro. That basically we're, a warm, open-minded community trying to help people with both personal and professional development. Tonight is about professional development. Most of our stuff is about personal development, but today is a professional development focus. And we're really hoping to increase happiness and decrease harm by creating this helpful community, supportive community, and really just trying to be helpful to people. So we hope that tonight's session is helpful. We would love your feedback. Everybody will get a survey at the end of the session, like sometime tomorrow probably. And we would love your feedback so that we can make future events even better. And I also want to say, people are welcome to raise their hands. I am pretty good about being able to take a pause when someone raises their hand and then let people ask questions. I like questions along the way because they're in context. And so feel free to raise your hand with questions along the way. You're also welcome to talk over me. I have no problem with that. And yeah, I just want to answer people's questions as they have them so that we can answer them in context. Any questions before we get started? All right. So today's talk is about the job search. And I think that I'll have some new techniques for finding a job. I hope that I will, that add value to your job search repertoire. Go ahead, Kara. Did you have a question?
I think you're good to go.
Okay. So basically, agenda-wise, I'll talk a little bit about myself and where I'm coming from. I'm looking up at my second monitor, so pardon me if I'm looking in the other direction. I'll talk about what type of job to pursue, how to use your network, how to use informational interviews to work your way towards a job at a company you're interested in, using recruiters, and then we'll talk about cold applications, which is probably a way of applying to jobs that everyone's familiar with, but we'll just touch on it. And then we'll talk a little bit about, help me help you, like other things that you can do to spend your spare time. So a little bit about myself, started my career as a developer in the 90s, went into product management through GE CIO leadership training program, moved up the ranks in GE till I reported to the CIO of a $255 million net income business in my late 20s. Got my first, basically that was when the financial services crisis came, left financial services and went into ad tech marketing tech with a company called Market Share, which was about a 200-person company at the time. And I got their product to the upper right quadrant of the Gartner report, along with the team that I was working with. I helped get them there, and they asked me to focus on the company's profitability. I helped more than double their operating margin in less than 8 months. I ended up getting a great offer somewhere else, but that company was sold a couple years later for $450 million. I've basically, my last job was with PricewaterhouseCoopers and Google in a joint venture. Managed a 50-person team of product managers, iOS, Android web developers, UX professionals, and a QA team. And they were 50%, 25 people in Shanghai, 25 in New York. So I went back and forth every month, and was in 3 completely new industries. And so basically managed all aspects of software development. I've led multiple product management organizations, and managed budgets of over $30 million. And so a lot of corporate stuff, a little bit of startup stuff. And then most recently, I started my own company called playrate.com, which gets you lots of free food for trying the best tasting food, the highest rated plates at restaurants. I'll talk a little bit about that at the end. But first I want to talk about, before you decide how to find a job, is to say, what should you be looking for in a job? And really, there are three main criteria, in my opinion, and anyone's welcome to add any other criteria that they think I've missed. Totally fine with feedback. I like feedback, actually. So one is that it should be in a career that you're excited about and passionate about. And if you're in a career that you don't enjoy, you may want to consider reskilling. One of the things I do through the Freethinker Institute is teach a product management bootcamp for people that want to change careers and go into product management, or just level up their product management skills if they're already in it. The other thing is you want to work for a company whose values you're aligned with, because if the culture is not a mutual fit, you could be in the right job, but if the culture is not a mutual fit, you're going to find that you're going to be unhappy in pretty much any job where there's not a good culture fit, and things just aren't going to feel comfortable. And then the other thing is you want to be in a growth development area and somewhere that you can have an impact so that you can really make a difference in that role. And so these are things that I recommend looking for when you are job searching, because I like this. I have another set of slides. Actually, let me pull it up. I'll do a quick digression onto why I think it's important to be in a growth area. Is inside your comfort zone, you're really not growing and developing. Outside of the growth zone, you're in your danger zone where you're afraid, and you're also not growing and developing because you're too afraid. Really, it's only when you're uncomfortable in your growth zone that you're actually growing and developing. And what happens is, if you stay in that growth zone for a good period of time, your growth zone gets bigger, your comfort zone gets bigger, and things that used to be in your danger zone are now in your growth zone and you can do them. And things that used to be in your growth zone are now in your comfort zone and are no longer helping you grow. And so you want a job that's going to keep you in your growth zone, and a company who has a culture that wants to keep you in your growth zone, because that's how you increase your sphere of influence and the amount of things that you can do. That's a little bit about why I say, being in a position where you can grow and develop is important. There's a YouTube video here. I'll post the link to the slides. If hopefully these will be accessible. I'm going to put them in the chat and in the online community. I will post a link to the online community and our YouTube channel and stuff like that in the chat as well. But we have a resources, no, not resources. We have a reference channel in the online community, and so I'll post the slides there too. And so I want to invite everyone to join the online community. I'll mention that again at the end, if I remember, hopefully. But yeah, you can check out the YouTube video. We're not going to watch it as a group. I don't think that's the best use of time here. But I will talk a little bit about your resume. So what I generally recommend is creating one master resume of all your jobs and all your skills and experiences. Force rank, prioritize bullet points from the most important bullet point to the least important in each job. And it can be as long as you want. You're not going to submit it to anyone. But then what you do is you create 2 to 3 role specific resumes. You could have one for product management, one for project management. And what you really want to do is look for the common job description requirements for each job type, and run a word cloud to look for common hot button keywords. And you really want to hit those keywords, because a lot of resume filters have automated filters that automatically filter resumes out if they don't have enough keywords associated with the job description. So you want to be using the keywords that hiring managers want you to use. Unfortunately, that's just part of how you get through the resume, AI filters. And it also resonates more with humans reading them when they see that you have the skills and experiences that they wrote about in their job descriptions, and that everybody writes about in their job descriptions in your field. For better or worse, I happen to buck that trend, and I like creative resumes, but I'm going to give you advice that will help you in the majority of companies that you apply for, rather than what I look for myself. Really the idea is to tailor that master resume so that you're hitting the points that are gonna filter you into the in group of resumes. And then you really want to be very pithy and action oriented in your bullet points. And then whether a human or a computer is scanning your resume, if you do all that, you should be in good shape. And there are lots of online resume help tools that you can go to as well. I recommend looking at some of those too. So the first thing that I'm going to cover in sort of the ways of the methods of job search. By the way, these are kind of in priority order. So I'm a big force rank prioritization guy. So I force rank prioritize everything. So the first and most powerful way to find a job is using people in your network, using former colleagues. You want to stay in touch with former colleagues that you respected and that you like, especially senior ones that'll be in hiring manager positions. Just reach out every 3 or 4 months and just say, hey, how you doing? Just wanted to check in, catch up with them, have coffee with them if you're in the same city. And even reach out to them when you're not job searching, just to like keep the relationship strong, and just to know what's going on with them. It's nice to stay in touch with people, and I recommend doing that so that when you are job searching, it's not like you're only reaching out to them when you are doing a job search. So I recommend that for former colleagues. Professional network, you basically
being reconstructed in that way.
Professional network, you basically want to look at there are like networking groups that you can go to and meet people who may be in your industry. There's a lot of professional people that you can there's a lot of networking tools. There's like Lunch Club and Shaper, and I used to use Shaper, now I use Lunch Club, that are just kind of like meet other professionals, some of whom are in your field and some of whom aren't. And that can be a useful way to build connections that could give you insights into jobs. Friends and family members are another avenue. The next, and so these are people that you can kind of have a more transparent, conversation. Hey, just wanted to see if you know anyone that is hiring in my area, and you can have a conversation with them. Nathan, you had a question.
Yes. So I think I have a pretty good network, but in terms of like my former supervisors and colleagues, I just find myself so embarrassed at my lack of career that I can't fathom, keeping in touch with them and just them asking, so what have you been doing lately? And, having to talk about how unemployed I am. And sorry, this is outside of the scope of your, I don't know, presentation, but I was wondering if you have any advice.
Yeah, no, that's definitely within the scope, because one of the things we're all battling with if we don't have a job is, like the feeling of, self-confidence that will help you in getting a job. When you don't have a job, one can feel very vulnerable, and it sounds like you're feeling that way. And what I would encourage you, and we're going to do another talk on self-worth another day with the Free Thinker Institute, and I would encourage you to come to that. But I'm going to give you the Cliff Notes version, which is, as long as you're trying hard to do what you think is best, and what you think is right, you should be proud of yourself wherever you are, right? Everybody loses jobs. Like, no one is like employed their entire life and never loses a job. And I don't want to say no one, because maybe some people are that way, but most people transition, multiple times in their careers. And so being without a job for a period of time is not anything to be embarrassed about. It's totally normal. And so, I would just say, and sometimes, there's all sorts of reasons that can happen. And so don't, beat yourself up over it or feel embarrassed about it. I would just say, keep your skills sharp, and one of the things I'll talk about at the end is that you can volunteer for organizations to keep your skills sharp and keep, an active resume, work experience or volunteer experience, and do things like that so that you still feel like you're adding value to society. And that's part of what I mean by trying your hardest to do the right thing. Is if you can contribute towards an organization that you're doing good by contributing towards, which if you follow all of my advice here, you will have spare time. And I'll talk about that at the end. But and so I would just encourage you to do that. And that way you'll have something to talk with your former colleagues about. Oh, I'm volunteering at this organization and this is what I'm doing to keep my skills sharp. Does that answer your question, Nathan?
It does excellently, by the way. So thank you so much. And, you know, worst case scenario, I'll blame COVID.
There you
But
go.
yes.
You can always blame COVID. Like COVID is a perfectly acceptable villain these days. And it's the biggest villain in the last 100 years, ever since the Spanish flu. So, so Bash.
You talked about comfort zone, danger zone. Do you have any advice as to where you draw the boundaries? Like, for example, some people might want to switch and acquire a new skill.
Yep.
Which I find it like for excuses, or you know, get a new skill, learn something new. But where do you draw the line? Are there any tools, resources, especially for someone who's a generalist that's been doing, you know, multiple things within an industry, mind
Right.
you, but it's more of a like a generalist. I'm an IT generalist. I was just wondering what your take on that is.
And you're asking, where do you draw the line between what's the growth zone versus the danger zone?
Yes, and the comfort zone, and that sort of thing.
So basically, if it's routine, and by the way, if anyone wants to join me on video, I love when people come on video. It's more real to have everyone on video. So, thank you, appreciate that. So we got one. So anyone else is welcome to join us. We're the two brave ones. So she's braver than me because I'm talking. I have to be on video. So thanks, Darlene. So so yeah, the comfort zone is really where. Great, Nathan. Good to see you. So the comfort zone is really where, you know, you're not growing and developing. You're kind of, you know, things are routine. Like it's easy. Like you're not uncomfortable at all. And so if you're not at all uncomfortable, you're probably in your comfort zone. And if something is really, you know, relatively easy or routine, it's probably your comfort zone. Now, an example of something, and danger zone and growth zone start to get a little bit harder to tell. But what I would say is, if you are truly afraid and you're so afraid that you don't feel like you're learning much, you're just like kind of petrified. Like think about, like, you know, if someone graduated college and you know, had no work experience, but had a friend that was like the CEO of a Fortune 50 company, and then put them into a big leadership role, right? That person's going to be petrified. Like that's a super clear example where they're going to be unsuccessful. They're going to be petrified. The chances of them being successful are extremely low. Now, you know, not many people are going to be successful when they get, you know, thrown that many levels up that quickly. So it's really where fear sets in, and you're responding emotionally based on fear rather than on growth and learning. Whereas if you're uncomfortable and you're like working hard to figure stuff out, and you're tired at the end of the day because you worked so hard to learn new things, that's kind of a sign that you're in the growth zone. And I basically spent my whole career working until I was exhausted at the end of the day. And I attribute that to a lot of learning that I had in my career, because I was always pushing myself to do new things that were different and trying new roles and trying different things, sometimes to my detriment. Like when I started my company, I pushed myself a little too far outside of my comfort zone, and that's another story for another day. But does that answer your question, Bash?
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Great, no problem. Jason, did you still have a question? You had your hand up before. You took it down, so maybe not. But I wanted to check.
Yeah, no, sorry. I'm not walking the dogs.
Okay.
Quick question. So
Yeah.
what happens if you get the fancy degree and a lot of experience, but it's just like you're volunteering, but that's all anyone wants you to do. And it gets to the point that anytime anyone reaches out to you, oh, I got a great opportunity for you. Oh, here, can you volunteer for this project? Yeah, you can take over this project. There might be money in the future. And then it winds up that you're doing everything, great titles for things, but at the end, all you've done is volunteer, and no one ever wants to pay you for anything. And you wind up making fast food wages when you have a master's degree.
So that's definitely not where you want to be either. And what I would say is, if you follow the advice that I'm going to have for you tonight, I don't think that'll happen to you. I think you'll find a role at a good job. But I would also sort of say, like, if you're volunteering somewhere and they don't have you in your growth zone where you're growing skills on a regular basis and you're learning new things constantly, and you're always in your growth zone, then I would, and they're putting you in your comfort zone, like something that you're good at, and they're just using you to execute in a volunteer basis. That's not where you want to be, right? You want to be volunteering somewhere where you're learning new things, you're growing, and you're getting something out of it, right? It should be mutual benefit. They're getting some free labor, but you're getting additional skills, and you're getting a job on your resume or volunteer work on your resume. So you don't want to get taken advantage of, and I would call it being taken advantage of when someone puts you in your comfort zone and uses you as an execution machine for free. That's sort of taking advantage of someone, in my opinion. Keeping them in their growth zone and giving them valuable skills and letting them taking a risk on you, that's putting you in your growth zone and helping you learn new skills that make you more valuable. So you're more likely to get a bigger job the next time you look for one, or the next time, like, as you're looking for one. Does that answer your question, Jason?
Yes, thank you.
Great. So now I'm going to talk about informational interviews. And basically, this is like a great skill, and I learned about this from reading in books. Basically, the idea, I modified what the book said a little bit, and I think it's a little bit better. And basically, what you want to do is create a forced rank list. I did say I like forced ranking of companies that you want to work for. And so, look for companies that are those three things that I mentioned in the beginning, where your values are aligned, where your role is going to be a growth role. And basically you want to find companies that you're excited about working for, your ideal target companies. And so in the technology space, people always talk about FANG. I don't know that that's necessarily that those are the best companies to work for, but a lot of people want to work for those. And so those would be a lot of people's tops in their target. Now, choose whatever is right for you. Some people want a small company, some people want a big company, a mid-sized company. But choose carefully, because this is your destiny here, which ones you choose as your top rank. And basically, for each company, starting from the number one company and then going down like one or two companies at a time, you want to look for open roles in that company, look for connections of people in your LinkedIn network that work at that company, and you want to connect with prospective contacts on LinkedIn. And I'll talk about how you connect to them in a little bit. And then you want to basically learn about the person you're speaking with and the company. And then you want to follow up with a handwritten card, and we'll talk about that in more detail as well. And you want to basically do this with 2 to 3 people at a time at your top companies until either you land a job or you're clear you're not going to land a job at that company. And it can be hard to know, but if it becomes clear that you're not going to, then, if the signs are obvious, then you can move on to the next company. But I would recommend, like, especially at a big company, there's a lot of networking you can do before you get to that point. So the connection request. So first, you want a carefully crafted response to, or like, a carefully crafted letter or like connection request. I took like some of this advice from the 2-Hour Job Search, which is a good book on job searching. And I recommend reading it on Blinkist. That's what I did. Blinkist is an app that does summaries of books. And so you basically get the essence of a book in like a 15-minute audio summary or 10 mobile pages. So I really like Blinkist. It's a great way to learn a lot of information in a short period of time. And I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing it right. Nasli, how do you pronounce it?
Correct. Hi.
Great. Hi.
I have been very high in self-confidence level, and in my master's studies, I applied for German Aerospace Center internship, and they let me in. After finishing that internship, I did other things. Now, I liked NASA, so I thought, okay, so let's connect with some people. And I added people on NASA, and they all accepted me. So I feel like I can like have easily connections with tens or hundreds of people. Should I stop this?
No, I don't
Because
think you should stop it. And I'm going to talk to you about how you can.
it is like there are like 46,000 people or some thousands of people work there. So me having like 200 connections there is not covering all NASA. But should I stop this? Yeah, I want your input. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I don't think you should stop, but I would, how do I say, I would follow up on the connections you have rather than just, create a large number of connections. You want to network your way to the people that are going to be in a position to be able to know about jobs that you may want to be hired in. And so you want to be strategic about who you connect with. Not just connect to the number, not worry about the number of people, but who are the people you're connecting with, and are they the ones in a position to be able to know about jobs that you would apply for? Does that make sense?
Yes, I feel also a bit odd.
What's that?
I feel a bit funny with this situation.
What do you feel funny about? Do you mean?
Like I feel very connected, but I'm nobody.
So that's and I'm going to talk to you about how you can become somebody on these people's radar screen, because right now you're connected, but you're nobody. We're going to talk about a strategy that will make you somebody in their life and start to build a relationship with people in the organization that you want to be a part of, in this case, NASA. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
You're welcome. So you don't want to mention in the connection request that you're job hunting, because that's usually clear, and you want to make it less than 75 words. You want to state anything you have in common with them. People like to hear what's in common with you. If you went to the same school, you were part of the same fraternity or sorority, like whatever you have in common with them, lived in the same part of the country. People love, and this is part of the, something from How to Win Friends and Influence People, a great book if you haven't read it. Highly recommend the Blinkist summary of that one as well. And you want, people naturally gravitate towards and build relationships with people that they have something in common with. So look for what you have in common with them, and mention that in your connection request, and then request some of their time in a very simple way. And also remember that 50%, at least 50%, usually over 50% of the message should be about them. Look at things in their career that impressed you and be like, oh, you worked on this part of this shuttle. Oh, that's impressive. Like, I hope that I can work on something like that someday. Or, you don't want to be too direct, like you're trying to like take their job or anything like that, but like, try to like empathize with them, or like show your appreciation for the work that they've done. People like to hear that. They like to, and that's another thing from How to Win Friends and Influence People. People like to hear, they like to talk about themselves, and they like to hear about themselves. And so talk about the person that you're connecting with and say what you appreciate about them. People like to be appreciated, right? We all like to be appreciated. So it's nice to appreciate other people. So the same thing goes for the conversation you have with them, by the way, which we'll talk about later. You want to talk about them more than you want to talk about yourself. So let's say you get them to agree to an informational interview. And you've asked them for 15 minutes of their time or 20 minutes of their time for an informational interview. Then you want to read all you can about the company. You can go to news.google.com or other news search engines. You want to read about their LinkedIn profile, learn anything you can about them. Google them, because a lot of times if there's someone that's high up there, they're going to be in the news, and there'll be news sources about them. So I don't recommend using sources like Facebook or unprofessional, like non-professional, non-LinkedIn type sources. Now, it's a personal preference. I just don't think that's the right way to research about people, but it's a personal preference. You want to look at if you can, try to find out like where they're located from a business address perspective. And the reason is because you're going to want to send them a thank you note afterwards. And so if you can find or subtly bring up in the conversation, oh, what building do you work out of? Oh, I work out of, 12 Main Street in Manhattan, right? Okay, cool. Now you can write, a letter addressed to Garrett Lang at 12 Main Street in Manhattan and send a thank you note after your informational interview. And a personal handwritten thank you note is something that not many people are doing today. So that'll make you stand out amongst other candidates or people that have met with them. So during the informational interview, once you've done all your prep, you want to ask questions to get to know the person better, and you want to be genuinely curious about who they are. I mean, this is a person that, you know, might be able to do you a favor, but is probably a super interesting person in your field. And don't get caught up in, are they going to get me a job? You want to just genuinely get to know them as a person and get to know who they are, what drives them, what motivates them, what do they like about working where they are. And you may turn out, like after having a few informational interviews about people, you may think, oh, the things people like about this company I wouldn't like, right? You may learn that's not the company for you, and then you're going to go to the next company on the list. You're just here to learn. You're not here to necessarily find a job. You're here to find the right fit, and you're here to find the right fit. And the way you're going to do that is by learning about them and the company. And so ask genuinely curious questions about them, the company, their function in the company's culture, and ask them what advice they have for someone interested in working at the company, you know, no earlier than 2/3 of the way into the conversation. That should be on the tail end, because it's starting to hint at like, yes, I'm kind of looking for a job, and you don't want to like lead in with that. It can be uncomfortable. So if you you basically like, you want to so interesting study was that the number one factor, let me let Bash ask his question.
So I mean, great stuff. I really, it's mind opening, but a lot of times the first person you're talking to is HR, a recruiter, you know, and how does that, or how would you modify that strategy to fit someone who's just screening you to let you in? You know what I mean?
Yeah, so if you apply with a cold resume, which we're going to talk about later in this deck, then the first person you're talking to might be HR. But if you're going at it the way that I'm proposing, you haven't even applied to the like any job in this company yet. You're just meeting people at the company without having applied once to any job there. You're just literally learning, you're getting intel, you're getting information, and you're trying to network your way to someone who might know about a job that you could apply for. And then you can be like, oh, can you introduce me to that person? Now you're getting to the hiring manager directly rather than going through HR first. And now, you know, they're going to be the ones saying, oh, I like you. You know, you did an informational interview with me. I want to encourage you to apply for the job. Now you have a much better shot at getting that job than just cold applying for, you know, which, you know, honestly, I did most of my career. I just cold applied with resumes. It's, you know, my least favorite way of applying for jobs. Out of everyone that I know, it's absolutely the worst, but it's what almost everybody does almost all the time. And then recruiters is like the second most common. So does that answer your question, Bash?
Yeah. Cool. Thank you very much.
So you also want to say nice things about the organization because you want to work there, and you probably have things that you like about it. I found it really interesting that one of the things I learned about in some of these books is that being likable is the number one way that people get hired. It's not necessarily the skills. It's not even necessarily the, you know, the technical talent or the, you know, anything like that. It's, do they like you? And so, you know, having a good smile, you know, just like being friendly and caring about the other person will make you more likable, and will also like help you feel better about yourself, you know, in that you're putting the other person first. And I think we all have a natural inclination to like to help other people. And so trying to like, you know, express a sincere interest in the other person that you're talking with will make you more likable, and saying good things about the organization that you appreciate about them and about their background will make you more likable. So those all make you like a prime candidate from someone that you're interviewing with, and it'll make them want to help you more. So it's also like, you know, this is, by the way, when I say for a successful interview, this is like if you get an interview for a job. So this is, you know, specifically for a job interview, like where you're, you know, applying for a specific role and you've gotten to that point. The other thing is that you should be comfortable pointing out your own weaknesses early on, because it shows that you're open to feedback and development. You don't want to beat yourself up, but you do want to be able to say, look, sometimes, you know, this is something that I could use improvement on, and be open to, you know, having flaws. You know, we have as one of our cultural values in Plate Rate, be open to having flaws. We all do, and thank those who help us, you know, point out feedback that will help us constructively improve, something like that. And so I think it's really a sign of humility. And there's another book that I recommend on Blinkist. I think it's called Humility is the New Smart or something like that. If anyone wants it, reach out to me and I can put it in the online community, or I can email it to you. It's a great book. It's one of the, you know, 25 or 30 that I thought were the best out of the 750 books that I've read on Blinkist. The other thing is save your strengths for the end. That combination of humility keeps the strengths at the top of the mind for the person that's interviewing you. And also, don't worry if you make a mistake. You know, you don't want to like harp on your own mistakes. You just kind of like move on, you know, flow with it. And we all make mistakes. Everyone understands that. So you make a mistake, you just move on. If they point it out, you can say, sorry about that, but don't like proactively apologize if they don't mention it. So after you do an informational interview, you want to have a follow-up. And this is where the handwritten note comes in on nice stationery, ideally with your name on it. And you really want to mention something that you enjoyed learning about them, and that you appreciate the advice that they had for people interested in working there, which is like a, you know, a kind of reminder to say, you know, if you have any insights into like ways for me to get a job there, right? It's a subtle way of saying, if you have any insights into a way for me to get a job there, I would still love to know them, and have your return address on the letter for sure. And, you know, they're going to be impressed that you wrote a handwritten note. Like, no one does that in 2022. So, you know, it will make you stand out in a positive way. So that's kind of the informational interviews. And I would argue that other than your close-knit personal network, that's really the next avenue that I would spend, you know, the most of your time on, networking with those top companies that you're interested in. Because the next two, which is recruiters and cold resume applications, are less targeted, right? Your recruiter is less targeted than, you know, unless it's a recruiter for a specific company, and most are, you know, generally free agent recruiters, then you know, you're going to be less targeted. So recruiters they're kind of a double-edged sword, right? The great part is that they have a big financial interest in placing you. Recruiters get paid a lot of money to place people in roles, so they have a strong interest in representing you positively. They also don't want to ruin their reputation, so they're not going to represent you if they don't like you. And that's why, like, a lot of recruiters will say only work with 2 or 3 recruiters. I disagree with that, because if you choose 2 or 3 recruiters and, you know, they're very polite but don't necessarily champion you, then, you know, you may end up not having anyone championing you. So I would recommend working with a reasonable number of recruiters. And really what you want to do is keep working with more recruiters until you see recruiters regularly bringing you roles. When recruiters are regularly presenting roles to you, then you know they're actively promoting you. And you really only need, you know, 3 to 5 doing that. But it doesn't necessarily hurt to have more. One time I went kind of crazy and I worked with all the recruiters that I could, and I ended up having 5 job offers in one job search, which was pretty cool, like, admittedly. And like, that doesn't happen super often, and I've never had that happen to me before, other than that one time. But you know, like, recruiters, it also depends on the job market, but recruiters can be really helpful, especially depending on the stage of your career. And they often have a relationship with the hiring manager, and they may also have access to roles that are not publicly posted through, like, resume applications. So sometimes people only want recruiters to recruit for them. They don't publicly post roles because they don't want to have to sort through a million resumes and have anyone do that. They want someone that is vetted by a person. And then they can also advocate to get you an interview. And the other thing that I really like is that salary discussions happen up front. I don't know, different people have different mindsets on this, but for me, I'd much rather talk about salary up front with a recruiter, so that I know that I'm not wasting my time and I'm not wasting the hiring manager's time. on a job that I'm just not going to take, right? If the salary is just way too low based on what I've made in the past or what I think that I'm worth, then I don't want to bother, doing 3 rounds of interviews for a company only to get an offer that's like, wait, I would never work for that, and so I find the salary discussion being upfront like a very big positive. I guess it depends on the person, but I see that as a positive. So I definitely think that like I said, better to work with more recruiters than too few. Better to work with too many than too few. And also stay in touch with the recruiters, because if you're top of mind, that will remind them, hey, I want to find a job for Lynn or Kara, like, or Chong, like I want to find a job for them because they keep reaching out to me. They're proactive. And let's face it, like if you're a proactive employee, you're going to be more successful in your job. If you're proactive with a recruiter, you're more likely to be proactive in your job. And so you being proactive with a recruiter shows them you'll probably be proactive in that job and represent them well. And people want to hire more through recruiters that brought them good employees. So being politely persistent, you don't want to bother them every day, but like every week or two, sending a friendly note saying, hey, just wanted to check in, see if there were any new roles. Maybe every 2 weeks is better. And if they give subtle indicators that you're reaching out too frequently, then do it less frequently and adjust accordingly. I keep a spreadsheet of the recruiters that I work with so that I know like how frequently I reached out to them, et cetera, et cetera. And that way, and like when they bring me jobs, like I keep a spreadsheet of all the jobs that they've brought me and that they've presented me to. And, I'm pretty spreadsheet oriented and I like to track everything. I actually track every single job I apply to as well. And that because sometimes you don't get the job description until, you don't get the job description back when someone accepts you to a job. So, it's good to have a spreadsheet of everything that you applied to. Shaunak, and then after Shaunak, we'll go to Bash.
Hi, Garrett. I was wondering about how do you, so I'm guessing, are these recruiters representing the company themselves, or are you actually referring to recruiting agencies? And if they are, like, sometimes I've heard many people get scouted out, but how do you find these recruiters, these list of recruiters?
So there's 2 answers to that. Some recruiters you find and some recruiters find you. So, like I've had, Facebook and Google and Amazon all reach out, recruiters that are employed by those organizations reach out to me, which is great. Two out of 3 of those I actually interviewed with. And so sometimes they're going to find you, sometimes you're going to find them. Putting your resume into resume databases will help them find you. So you want to be in like Indeed.com and, in the technology industry, Dice.com was another one that was big. And you want to be in like, Monster.com was another one that was big for a long time. You want to be in those like common resume databases so that when someone is searching resume databases, if they search for your keywords, that you come up. So I definitely recommend being able to be found and seen. If you're currently employed and looking for a job, you can usually in those databases, blind your information. So it doesn't say where you're currently working or your address or your name. It just like has your, it may say where you're currently working, but it doesn't say your name or address. And so they don't necessarily like, your boss isn't going to find you if your boss is looking for people to be a peer of yours. They're not necessarily going to find you. And so, that's one way to be found. But then you should also reach out proactively to, in product management, there are like half a dozen people who are probably less than half a dozen firms that are really good at product management in New York City. And so you want to, research and Google who are the good recruiting firms for my field and, reach out to those people proactively. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks.
Yep. Bash, did you still have a question or should I keep going?
You kind of touched on it.
Okay.
I would be interested in knowing, how did you handle when you were part of a mass email of recruiters coming to you, that not necessarily targeting you, but more of a keyword in your resume, and shady companies. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, no, I get those emails every week. I get like 5 of them a week. And I mean, I can tell you what I do is actually I, you know, well, let me explain what I would do. I'll tell you what I do afterward, but basically, I would say, if they have a job that's interesting to you and like targeted, like a fair target for you, then yeah, reach out to them and say, yes, you're interested. And, ask, you may want to ask like, what company is it if they don't tell you the company, because sometimes those sketchy people don't tell you the company. And you do need to like know that the sketchy recruiters often don't have as good of a relationship with the hiring manager. And once one recruiter submits your resume, that recruiter gets the priority. And so you may not want that sketchy recruiter being the one that submits you at Google, because you may have a recruiter in your LinkedIn network that has a good relationship with a lot of hiring managers at Google that will give you a better, insight into how to get into that organization. So you have to do that trade-off. Don't just take the first thing that comes, like be strategic about it. But I also, I don't want to say that none of those people could be of any use. Although because they wouldn't be, they have to have some relationship with the hiring manager in order to like be promoting their job. So there must be some way for them to get to the hiring manager. But I would go on strength of personal connection over just someone reached out to me. But some of them may know about jobs that are more obscure, and they may have an inside connection through their personal relationships that is beneficial for you to take advantage of. Does that answer your question? Cool. So, recruiters should always ask for your consent before you're submitting you to a job. And if they don't work with them. Because like I said, once they submit you to a job, they get priority credit. And you should have to approve that they submit you to the job. They should ask you, can I submit you to this company? And if they submit you without asking you, drop that recruiter like a hot rock and say, please don't submit me to any future companies. I wish you the best of luck. Thank you for your time, but then move on. You don't want someone submitting you without your permission, because you might have already been in informational interviews with a company, and then this recruiter submits you and then circumvents what would have been an organic path to getting a job there. And now this recruiter is going to cost that company, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 more to for them to hire you. And now maybe they're less interested in you because it costs more money to hire you through the recruiter rather than through your informational interview process. So you have to balance out that if you're making good headway on your informational interviews, you may not want a recruiter to submit you to that company because you're doing a good job on your own already. And if it's free for the company to hire you, you're obviously like more desirable than if it costs $50,000 to hire you through a recruiter. Companies don't want to spend that kind of money unless they're really sure that they like you, and they're going to be much pickier about you if they have to pay that kind of recruiter money. And recruiters usually charge 20% to 33% was the last numbers that I heard of an annual salary. So it's a high fee. And some are cheaper than that, and some are probably more expensive than that. But that's a range that is that I've heard throughout my career. So cold applications, my least recommended way, but you can tread a lot of ground here, and I'll give you some tips on how to do it more efficiently. Often, I think jobs found this way are less desirable because this is like people that are not attracting as much talent through the personal network, and the best jobs are usually gotten through the personal network or informational interviews. And then when you do search this way, you want to go to job search sites relevant to your industry and location. And so most professional jobs, LinkedIn and Indeed.com are a good bet. There are probably other industry ones. Like I said, Dice for technology is good. And there are other ones for different industries. And so know the ones that are good in your industry and be in them. Some tricks and tips that I didn't learn until way longer than I would have liked. When you search for search terms, you want to like think of a bunch of search terms that are going to be the search terms that you search for on that database, and then take a note of what those search terms are. So like director of product, VP of product, senior product manager might be like the 3 search terms that you're going to look for. And those are pretty wide variety, but like just giving examples. And then what you want to do is when you search by date. And the reason you want to search by date is because the first time you search for that search term on that site, you're going to apply to everything for the last 2 to 3 weeks that appears. And you're going to spend all day applying to everything for the last 2 to 3 weeks. And you're going to spend like 8 hours, maybe 1 or 2 days in a row, and you'll apply to everything in the last 2 to 3 weeks. Once you've done that one time, every time you come into that site in the future and you search for that search term and you apply by date, all you have to do is apply to things that were added in the last 24 hours. Whereas if you do a blended search, which is what they do by default, you end up having to apply, like filter through like 20 pages and like just to find that new thing that was added in the last day. Way more efficient to sort by date. Any questions about any of that? All right, so the next thing I'm going to say is if you do all of that right, you should still have a fair amount of spare time, because applying to resumes, within an hour, maybe an hour and a half or 2 hours a day, you should apply to everything. You can only do so much reaching out on LinkedIn and informational interviews, without crossing paths with the same people. And so, if you do, and you can only interact with recruiters so much, recruiters don't spend a lot of time with candidates, quite frankly. And so you'll meet them, you'll meet them one time sometimes. Like some recruiters want to meet you, some don't. You kind of can go with the flow with what they want. But all of that should probably not take you more than 4, at most 5 hours a day. And if you like to work, when your job, everybody always told me, treat your job search like a job. And so you should always be spending at least 8 hours a day. I recommend 10 hours a day, because you should be working harder to find a job than to keep a job. So I recommend working 10 hours a day. But what I'm going to say is you don't need to spend all that time looking for a job. I would spend some of it doing some volunteer work. And Nathan.
Yeah, so I was wondering if you ever had any experience with this. So if, let's say I apply for position A in a certain company, and then my application is either rejected or not even noticed. And then let's say 2 months later, that same company is hiring for a different position. If let's say I apply for that other position, and let's say they notice retroactively that I have applied for multiple positions in their company, would just the fact that I did that be seen as a negative in their eyes, or a positive, or neither? Yeah.
So I think it depends on what you applied for. So if you applied for a VP of product role, and then 2 months later you applied for like a senior product manager role, that might be seen as a negative, because now you're starting to look a little desperate. Like, I thought I was a VP of product, and now I think unless they think your resume is more in line with a senior product manager, in which case it may be a good thing. And so it really depends on a lot of factors. You want to try to like this is why I keep track of everywhere that I've applied to too, because then you'll know, did you apply to that company and what roles did you apply to? And you can think through it. But essentially, I would just, if you focus your effort on applying to anything that you think is a good fit for you, that's what I would focus on. I think the reason that it would look at a negative is if you applied to a director of product role, and then 2 months later you apply for a data analyst role, right? It's a totally different field, which you may not have experience in, but if your background is in product management and you're at a director level, that position made sense to apply for. But the data analyst is well, he's just trying to apply for anything that is out there, Now, if you were to be networking your way in an informational interview and they said, well, look, we don't have a a director of product role now, but we have a data analyst role. And you could say, oh, you know what, I've always had an interest in data analysis, but I've never, had an opportunity to learn it. And, then maybe it makes more sense. But cold applying to resumes like that, I wouldn't necessarily recommend, where it's like outside of your wheelhouse, where it looks like you're just trying to apply to anything. If they think you're just trying to apply to anything, then they're going to see you as being desperate and not so much interested in them.
No, thank you. That's true, and I think it reiterates why finding a job through networking and informational interviews is better, because it contextualizes to in their eyes your strategy.
Exactly, and you can ask questions, right? And you can understand, and and they may say, look, this is a data analysis role, but our data analysts almost always go to director of product management within 2 years, right? That's our career progression. And then you can be like, oh, well, I've always wanted to do data analysis anyway, and I really love your company. I love their values. I want to be a part of the company. If that's a way to get in, and I can long-term, 2 years from now, end up in the position I wanted to be in the beginning anyway, fine, that's my foot in the door, and I'm very open to that, and I would enjoy doing it. You can say all that in an informational interview much better than you can on a resume and a cold application, where you can't say it at all, quite frankly. So
yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. So the next thing I'm going to say is do something with your spare time. And so you should have spare time. 4 to 6 hours a day is probably like what I would recommend, what I would anticipate you would have to spare. And I think exercise, staying healthy, keeping your energy up, eating healthy, keeping your energy up and your spirits high. Another talk we'll give in the Free Thinker Institute is about, and I think we already talked about this a little bit, is the secret, the secrets to happiness. There are a couple of secrets to happiness that I think I've learned about, one through Stoicism and one through Buddhism. The one through Buddhism is basically about, just avoiding disappointment. Be excited about the next possibility and learn from your mistakes, but don't be disappointed by them. I like to say the only mistakes are the ones you don't learn from. If you learn from a mistake, it was a lesson learned, it's not a mistake at all. And so don't worry about mistakes and don't worry about failures. Failures are not bad as long as you learn from them. So keep your spirits high, keep your focus positive. And that said, I recommend considering volunteering, whether it's for a not-for-profit whose mission you believe in, or a startup, which I think is better. And I offer opportunities like this I'll talk about in a little while. If you want to have a current job in your area of expertise at an existing company, volunteering for a startup is a way to do that. Shaunak, go ahead.
I had another question about cover letters.
Yeah.
So previously in job searches, I have seen that when you apply a cover letter, and a cover letter does need to have a proper format, it needs to be written in a proper way and everything. The main thing is I've seen people, you give your time into writing a targeted cover letter, and many times people just don't read it. So, I mean, is it any useful adding in a cover letter? Because most of the time people will not read it, and in the job search process, it says that takes up some time because you have to tailor it properly. Another thing is it better to instead of a cover letter, provide a recommendation letter your previous supervisors might have written you, which is much more reflective maybe. But the first thing still stands. People just don't read the cover letters.
Yeah. I may not convince you because it sounds like you're already convinced that people don't read them. I will tell you, I know multiple hiring managers that will not even look at an application without a cover letter. So I definitely recommend having one because of people like them. I'm totally not that way, but definitely know hiring managers that literally don't look at anyone that doesn't have a cover letter. So I would encourage you to have one. I also would encourage you not to agonize over it, because if you spend an inordinate amount of time on cover letters, and I do agree with you that a lot of people don't read them, I usually skim them, but I don't read them 100% of the time, because if I like the resume, I don't always read the cover letter. I usually, to be honest, I skim the cover letter to see whether or not it's tailored to my company. And if it is, I do read it. But if it's just a generic cover letter, I often don't read it. So if you really care about a company, then yeah, put the time and effort into customizing the cover letter, because people like me will see that as a differentiator. And I definitely give way more priority to someone who wrote a custom cover letter that explains why they're a good fit for my company, that actually takes into account what my company does and what's different about us, right? That says they did their homework, they actually care, and they're really interested in working with me. So it can be a differentiator for you, but I would also say you are right that a lot of people don't read them. And what I would recommend is the same strategy that I mentioned with a resume, which is, and this is what I used to do with cover letters, is I would have one cover letter that had everything that I would want to say in a cover letter. And then based on the job description, I would pick and choose from my master cover letter which things to copy and paste into the cover letter. And they were done in bullet point form, so it was easy to copy and paste. And so I could put a cover letter together. I could assemble one in like less than 5 minutes that was basically custom tailored to all of, highlighting my experiences that meet that job description, and then we're in the appropriate cover letter format. And that, I think served me pretty well. So that's kind of like a balance. Now, sometimes I wrote like a totally custom cover letter for a company that I was super interested in, but most of the time I was using assembly line format. Does that answer your question, Shaunak?
Yeah, and for the second part, what do you think about adding in a recommendation letter, your previous supervisors wrote for you? Does that have more ground than a cover letter maybe?
So you can do that. I used to attach anecdotes, like I would ask for feedback from colleagues, and I had like a multi-page document of like, things people had said about me that worked with me. And I used to attach that to resumes. I don't know if it ever helped. Like I never really got feedback that, hey, that document really helped me understand who you were better. I thought it was pretty convincing. I think if someone sent me that, I would really appreciate it. But I don't have any like firm data indicators that it was helpful. A recommendation letter is kind of the same thing, but it's only from one person. And in general, what I would recommend is, instead of getting a recommendation letter, asking people to write recommendations on LinkedIn, because most people will check out your LinkedIn profile. And so if they check out your LinkedIn profile, then they'll see all your LinkedIn recommendations, and having a bunch of good LinkedIn recommendations is helpful. So I would sort of err on the side of LinkedIn recommendations rather than uploading a recommendation letter.
Okay, thanks, Garrett.
Sure. So, personally, I think both volunteering for a not-for-profit, and volunteering for a startup that'll give you experience are good. I have a startup that gives people experience, so I guess I'm biased, and I'll give that caveat aside. But like, I do think that like saying that you're working for an existing company, even if it's a volunteer position, you don't have to even say that in your resume. You just say, I'm a consultant for this company. And if you're working 4 to 6 hours or even 8 hours a day for a company, then you're basically in a full-time role, and hopefully getting valuable experiences. And like I said, you should be getting something out of this. Either have an opportunity at making money, earning equity, there should be some positive and learning skills, potentially, either one, the other, or both. And so the good part is you have a current employer that makes you more desirable. You don't have to mention if you're not paid. You should generally earn equity or revenue shares in a company that you're volunteering with, in my opinion. I would never like take someone on without giving them revenue share equity. Now, mind you, my company's philosophy is to try to become a company that makes enough money that we can be more generous than other companies. So I operate from that perspective of wanting to be generous, although we are pre-traction, so we can't pay US salaries right now. And so all of our roles in the US are equity and revenue share based. But we offer a lot of equity, for people that work with us. And you should be getting work experience, which early on in your career is really valuable, but also is even helpful later in your career, as long as it's growth experience, right? growth zone experience. It's something that you're learning that is new in your career. You're doing new tasks. Nathan.
Sorry if I'm asking too many questions.
No,
but
I love questions. It's my favorite part.
okay. But to point number one, I agree with it completely. But what about running your own company? Would that be seen as desirable, or would it be seen like, oh, if we were to hire this person, he'd be too busy running his own company on the side that he won't be putting all his energy in his day job, kind of
So
thing?
there's a double-edged sword there, and it depends on who the hiring manager is. I think that there is a very common, like, I've definitely like interviewed people who were pretty clearly, and sometimes I realize this, and sometimes other people that interviewed them pointed it out to me, pretty clearly were looking for a paycheck so that they could just fund their own company. And if someone has the impression that you're going to do that, that's a very big negative as an employer, because no one wants someone that just wants a paycheck, right? They want someone passionate about the company that wants to make an impact. That said, like, there's a lot to be learned as an entrepreneur. I think I've learned more as an entrepreneur than I have in most of my roles. And, you know, I think I'm a more valuable and well-rounded employee for having been an entrepreneur. And so there's a lot of value to doing it. But in general, I would, you know, I would encourage you, like, if you're gonna go, like, I don't know, I guess my, like, you're gonna have to deal with, if you're doing it that way, like trying to convince and be clear with someone that you really are dedicated. It will be an uphill battle to convince them that, yes, I have my own company. Now you could, if you are actually genuinely planning on shutting down your own company when you work for them, you can say that, and that kind of clears it up. But if you want to keep doing your own company, then it's an uphill battle. And quite frankly, if you want to be an entrepreneur, you may want to keep doing your own company. And I don't recommend lying. You will almost always get caught eventually, and it's really does more harm than good to lie. So I definitely don't recommend lying. Then again, my first cultural value is integrity first, even before profitability. So I take, you know, honesty as a really important thing. So that said, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think it definitely sheds some insight. I mean, I'm at a point in my life where I'm at that crux and I have to decide, should I look for work or start a company? Because
Yeah,
this
I
fits
was.
in point. Like writing cover letters for me is just so painful.
Yeah,
Just
and I don't even recommend writing them. Like I said, assembly line, right? Assemble one cover letter that's got everything you would want to say in cover letters, and then just copy paste. It's much less painful that way. But that said, like, if you have always wanted to be an entrepreneur and you have the financial resources to do it, I highly encourage it. And, you know, getting a part-time job might be, you know, a way to do it. Although it can be hard to find a part-time job in a lot of, like, as a product manager, it's really rare to find a part-time job. So that can be tough.
basically, I want to start a company, but I also don't want that to be the reason why I can never get a job again for the rest of my life, because they see, oh, look, he tried to start a company X many years ago, you know.
Right. I don't think it's going to be like that. Like, you know, definitely, like, certain people will say, like, there is a stigma of entrepreneurs are, you know, too self-confident and hard to manage because they're so independent. And so there's like a stereotype of that. But you know, if they read your resume and you got an interview and you show that you're not that way, then I think you would be fine. I'm not going to say that no one would rule you out because you started your own company, although you can also, you know, you don't have to necessarily say you were a co-founder of a company. You can just say you worked at the company. And if they don't research it carefully, they may not know if you're really worried about it. You can just say you were the head of product at the company, or the, you know, and you don't have to say that you were the founder of it. Now, there's a lot of value to having been a founder of a company. And so you may want to say that. And so it's, you know, it's one of those things, is like, what do you want to select for? And I generally think that erring on the side of honesty and transparency is better. And just saying, yeah, I was a co-founder, and to be honest, do you really want to work for someone who doesn't want someone that has such a valuable experience? So you may intentionally rule out people that you simply wouldn't want to work for anyway. And that may be a good thing, even though it rules you out. It's actually a good thing that it rules you out rather than a bad thing.
Thank you.
Sure. So, you'll learn new skills. Startups, you end up wearing a lot of hats. So that's another benefit. And then if the company gets traction or makes significant revenue and you are a key contributor, chances are good they're going to bring you on full time rather than risk losing you. Bash.
Do you keep a list of the top books that you read? That you could share?
The Blinkist books, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do have a list of the Blinkist books I've read, along with summaries of what I learned from them.
Do you mind sharing that, please?
I'd have to go through it because I write a lot of business ideas that I come up with then that are proprietary. So I may not be able to share it, but what I could share is like the list of the top titles that I recommend you read, because like I said, I've read over 750 Blinkist books, and there are less than, I think it was 30 that are like the top ones that I would highly recommend reading that I thought were like really useful and or either really useful, most of them, or a couple of them, like The Mosquito, which was like super intellectually interesting, and I found fascinating how many world history events were changed by mosquitoes. Like, it's a little bit, I mean, like, I thought I was going to hate that book, and I don't even know how it got on my list. I don't even remember adding it, but like, it became one of my top books. So, there were some surprises like that, but most of them are like really useful wisdom types of books that I'm happy to share that list. Just remind me, Bash, to share that. I'll put my email in I'll put my email in the chat.
Awesome. Thanks.
Yeah.
I sent a request for access to the Google Doc, the presentation, because it's protected.
Oh, thank you. The pitch is protected.
Yeah, so I don't know if it's by design or not.
No, it's not. It's just that sometimes I forget to set the sharing settings. I think when I originally created it, there may have been a reason to it, but I like to add everything with comment access, like all of my stuff, so that people can add comments on them. I was just reading some of the chat stuff. So let me just finish this. We're almost at the end, I think. I want to mention a little bit about my company. If anyone is interested in job experience at a food tech company, I'll mention it quickly. You basically get a 60% credit in free food for ordering and rating the top rated menu items at our partner restaurants. And then when you come back and you use your 60%, you get a 30% credit if you try new top rated menu items. And then basically, if you're vegetarian, all of those incentives are dietary preference specific. And so we'll only incentivize you to try stuff that meets the food, the dietary preferences that you have. We won the most visionary product of the year award out of a group of more than 30,000 product managers. And we do have equity and revenue share roles for anyone interested in product management, sales, customer solutions. We don't have software development anymore, but all the other ones we do. And generally, I'm just looking for people to add value to the company and find some win-win way of collaborating. So that's a little bit about Plate Rate. There's also the Free Thinker Institute, which is my not-for-profit, which if anyone wants to volunteer at that's what this event is done through, is the Free Thinker Institute and the online community. I want to post I'm going to stop sharing, and then I'm going to post okay, so this is the Free Thinker Institute .org is the website for the Free Thinker Institute. You can see it here, and then if you click join on Discord, that's the online community. And so just to show people, the online community, I'll do a quick demo. Well, first let me ask if there are any other questions about the job search lecture or talk, really, or conversation. I hope it was. Anyone have other questions? So if there are no other questions, I'll do a quick demo of the online community, and I'll also post in the chat the information about the Free Thinker Institute for someone. I don't know, did someone post the YouTube channel? Was that what they posted?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. Was that the YouTube one that was in the presentation?
Yes.
Okay. So that's the
I
YouTube
just-
one that was in the presentation. Thank you for posting that. I'm also going to post the Free Thinker Institute YouTube channel. Like, this recording will go up on the YouTube channel. And we have a lot of other recordings of other events that I think some of which would probably be helpful to you guys if you haven't come. I think some of you have been to our other events, but for those that haven't, I hope you'll find other ones useful too. You know, a lot of personal development, but some professional development. And so I just posted the website, the Discord community. Let me share the Discord community. So this is what Discord looks like. You have on the left different topics. And so on the very left here, you have icons. And so this is the logo for the Free Thinker Institute. And then on the left here is like within what's called a server. These are all servers. I'm in a ridiculous number of servers. And then on the left, you can see this event here advertised. And then our other events are advertised in the community. And then you have like the general chat, which is where people join. And then we have different topics on the left. We have the 5 intentions, which are the values of the Free Thinker Institute. And then we have, you know, general professional, product management, developers, quality assurance, sales, and then intellectual stuff like philosophy, science, MBTI. And then there's you know, how can we improve if you have suggestions for like new topics or anything like that. And then this is just a place that you can interact with other people. I invite people, I do professional networking here. So there are professionals. I am going to be starting to send invites to other communities, you know, and I really want to make this a place for like a meeting point for people to like, you know, find mutually beneficial relationships. And I really, you know, we're working towards creating like a membership of the Free Thinker Institute where members are basically trying to be the best version of themselves and seek truth, and where we can kind of help each other be better versions of ourselves. So that's the personal and professional development side of, you know, trying to create a, you know, this warm community where we all help each other be better people, basically. And I think, you know, that's kind of, you know, what I think is my purpose in life. And I think it's a purpose in life that resonates with a lot of people, is to be a better version of ourselves. And by doing that, we increase our sphere of influence and our ability to help those that we care about be happier and suffer less harm. And so that's really the goal of the organization. And also another really ambitious goal of the Free Thinker Institute is to create a world where everybody makes enough money that money doesn't buy happiness. And so that's part of why we're focused on personal and professional growth, is to help people grow professionally so they have a valuable skill set doing something that they love that also can earn them a good salary. Any other questions or thoughts or anything like that?
Great talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for coming. Really appreciate it. We got more people than I was expecting, to be honest. I thought we were going to have like 5 people tonight. I don't know what happened. I have no idea. Like, how can I ask, like, how did you guys find this?
I found it on Meetup, and thank you as well for taking all my questions and for all the insights you provided. This was definitely stuff that you don't hear elsewhere.
Thank you. I'm glad. And that's actually part of the goal of the Free Thinker Institute, is to teach stuff that you don't hear elsewhere, where like academia doesn't teach this stuff, right? No one's teaching like how to find a job. So we want to teach stuff that adds value to people's lives where no one else is teaching it, or like very few people are, and it's hard to find that information, but it adds value to people's lives. So if there are other topics you guys are interested in, feel free to send me a note. We take requests, and we did a survey a while back about different topics. The initial community that we reached out to was a philosophy community. And so a lot of the questions were, or the topic interests were philosophically oriented, which is my hobby is practical philosophy. And I write a lot of papers, which if you go to the online community and you go to reference, you'll see a lot of my papers from other talks and other nights. But yeah, we really just want to add value to people's lives and to each other's lives for people who become members. So, would love feedback on anything and everything that we're up to, and on what you want us to cover.